Someone who's brilliant, genuinely, unmistakably smart, and they don't have a degree hanging on their wall. Maybe they dropped out. Maybe they never even applied. Here's the tension nobody names out loud. School picked one kind of smart, decided it was the only one that counted, and tested the whole species on it. If you were good at that one kind, you got the gold star, the acceptance letter, the family bragging rights. If you weren't, you got told, quietly, or not so quietly, that you weren't smart. That's not true. It never was. There isn't one intelligence. There are 11 of them, measurable, documented, and almost none of them show up on a report card. Today, we're counting down all 11 types of smart, from the one everyone already recognizes to the one so rare it barely has a name. Stick around to the end. Type 1 might be closer to home than you think. Welcome back to Inner Script. Let's get into it. Type 11, the copy and apply mind. You watch someone do something once, you can do it back. Follow the recipe. Run the process. Fill in the form, the way the last 3 people filled in the form. Psychologists call this crystallized intelligence. Knowledge you've banked and can pull out on command. The accumulated, what I already know how to do. It's not flashy. Nobody writes a movie about the person who follows instructions well, but almost every job on earth runs on this. The surgeon executing a procedure they've done 400 times. The accountant who doesn't have to relearn the tax code every April. You don't need a new idea for this kind of smart. You need a steady one, and a world that mostly works because people show up and do the thing correctly. Again, is not a small kind of smart. It's the floor everything else stands on. If this is your strongest type, here's the thing worth knowing. The world doesn't reward you for reinventing the wheel every morning. It rewards you for turning the wheel reliably, on time, every single day. Nobody's watching. That's not a consolation prize. That's infrastructure. Type 10, fast fact mind. This is the friend who remembers the name of the actor, the year the movie came out, and the plot twist of a film they saw once a decade ago, while you're still trying to remember what you had for breakfast. Cognitive scientists describe this as strong declarative memory, the ability to encode and retrieve specific facts fast, without effort. It feels like a party trick. Is it, though? It's a nervous system that files information instead of losing it. Here's the catch. This is also the kind of smart schools reward the hardest and life rewards the least. You can win every trivia night and still struggle to read a room. Fact, fast, and wise are not the same muscle. If this is you, you've probably been called smart your whole life for a skill that has almost nothing to do with judgment. The fix isn't complicated. Use the facts as raw material, not the finished product. Recall gets you in the door. It's what you do with what you remember that decides whether anyone wants you to stay in the room. Type 9, the numbers mind. Logic, math, the kind of thinking that takes a messy problem and finds the one clean rule hiding underneath it. This is what psychologist Howard Gardner called logical mathematical intelligence. And here's the part that matters for the title of this video. It's almost the only kind of smart a standardized test actually measures. Your degree isn't one type of smart. It's proof you are good at exactly this one, which is fine. It's real intelligence. It built bridges and vaccines and the phone in your pocket, but it's one lane on an 11-lane highway, and for 100 years, the whole highway got graded on how fast you drove in this lane alone. If you were never a numbers person, that was never a verdict on your mind. It was a verdict on one 20th century test. So if a number on a childhood exam still lives rent-free in your head, evict it. It was measuring one lane of traffic and reporting back on the whole highway, and it never even glanced at the other 10. Type 8, the room reader mind. You walk into a space and you know, before anyone says a word, who's upset, who's performing fine, and who's about to say something they shouldn't. Researchers trace part of this to mirror neurons, cells that appear to fire both when you feel something and when you watch someone else feel it. One of the closer things neuroscience has to a biological account of empathy. That's not softness. That's a sensor running quietly in the background, picking up signal most people miss. People with it running strong often don't realize it's rare, because to them, the room was never quiet. It was always talking. They just learned the language early, sometimes long before anyone was paying attention to them at all. Ever wonder why you're always the one everyone quietly checks in with first? That's not luck. That's this type, working exactly as designed. We're only a third of the way down this list, and if you've already recognized yourself twice, that's not an accident. Most people carry 2 or 3 of these. Almost nobody carries all 11. Stay with me. The next 3 get a lot more personal. Type 7, the feeler mind. Psychologists Peter Salovey and John Mayer built the actual documented framework for this, and it's more precise than the version you've heard secondhand. It's not being nice. It's 4 specific skills: reading emotion accurately, using emotion to think better, understanding why a feeling is happening, and managing it in yourself and in the room. People strong here don't avoid feeling things. They use what they feel as information instead of being run by it. Turns out, the calmest person in a crisis usually isn't someone who feels less. They're someone who processes faster. If you've ever been told you're too emotional in a room that badly needed exactly that skill, the problem was never your feelings. It was the room. Type 6, the fixer mind. Give this person half the budget, half the time, and a problem nobody planned for, and they'll have something working. By the end of the day, psychologist Robert Sternberg called this practical intelligence, knowledge you never got taught directly. The unwritten rules of how things actually work, learned by doing instead of by studying. It's largely independent of how someone scores on a written test. You can be brilliant on paper and useless in the room, or the other way around, completely. If you've ever felt smarter at your job than you ever felt in school, this is probably why. Formal education rarely tests improvisation. Real-life tests almost nothing else. The parent who keeps a household running through 3 emergencies before breakfast has this in spades, whether or not a single test ever measured it. Type 5, the storm-trained mind. And this one starts somewhere different. Researchers studying what's been called a hidden talents framework have documented something specific. A nervous system that grows up inside an unpredictable home doesn't just get damaged by it. It gets sharpened by it in very particular ways. Faster at switching plans, faster at reading a shift in tone, faster at improvising when the ground moves. Here's what's actually happening under the hood. Your brain didn't fail to develop normally. It developed correctly for the environment it was actually standing in. The cost was real. Nobody should have needed to build this skill set that young. But what you built is still yours. Not weakness, just wiring that's still working even in rooms that are finally calm. You don't owe anyone a return to chaos just to feel useful again. Type 4, the idea maker mind. This is the connection nobody else in the room saw coming. 2 unrelated things suddenly related. Neuroscience points to something called the default mode network, brain regions that activate not when you're focused hard on a task, but when you're relaxed enough to let ideas collide on their own. The solution that shows up in the shower isn't random. It's your brain finishing a calculation it started hours earlier, off the clock. Creative people aren't undisciplined. The ones who are actually good at this move fluidly between focus and daydream, using whichever one the problem needs. Ever notice your best ideas never arrive when you're trying hardest to force them? That's not laziness. That's the mechanism doing exactly what it's built to do. 3 left, and they get rarer and heavier from here. Type 3, the big picture mind. Most people, faced with a problem, fix the problem. This mind asks a different question first. What structure keeps producing this problem over and over, regardless of who's involved? Researchers call it systems thinking, seeing feedback loops where everyone else sees a straight line from cause to effect. It's a specific kind of patience, the willingness to not fix the urgent thing immediately, because you can already see it coming back in 3 months if you do. It's a quietly exhausting kind of smart, because you can see the slow motion collision everyone else only notices on impact. Type 2, the self-watching mind. This is thinking about your own thinking, catching yourself mid-assumption, noticing the moment you're about to believe something because it's comfortable, not because it's true. Psychologists call it metacognition, and it's one of the strongest predictors of good decision-making there is, because it's the only kind of smart on this list that checks all the others for errors. Without it, every type here has a blind spot it can't see on its own. With it, you at least know where to look. It's also one of the loneliest kinds of smart to live with, because it means catching yourself, being wrong in real time, out loud, in front of people. And type 1, the integrator mind, the rarest one on this list. The real story is much simpler than it sounds. It's what happens when someone can move fluidly between several of the other 10, on command, depending on what the moment actually needs. Logical in a crisis, emotional in a loss, systemic in a meeting, instinctive when there's no time to think at all. Here's the part that's hard to hear. This kind of smart is often quietly lonely. There are very few people running the same range in the same room at the same time. You adapt to everyone. Not many people adapt back at that speed. That's not a flaw. It's just the price of range nobody warned you about. You didn't choose to be the one who adapts. You just never stopped. And somewhere along the way, nobody thought to ask if it was tiring. So here's the line. It was never between people who are smart and people who aren't. That line never existed. It's between people who know which kind of smart they actually are, and people still trying to be good at a kind that was never theirs, chasing a version of intelligence that was built for somebody else's brain. 3 things to do with that. 1. Name your type out loud like a fact, not an apology, not a brag, either, just a fact. Finally have a name for. 2. Stop applying for rooms and relationships built for a different mind than yours. A fixer mind will always feel behind in a room built to reward the numbers mind, and that's not a personal failing, that's a mismatch. 3. Put your particular kind of smart somewhere it's actually needed, on purpose, not somewhere it happens to be tested. Whatever got you here, the environment, the childhood, the years of practicing a skill nobody clapped for. It kept you moving, got you here. Of the 11, which one hit closest? Drop the number 1 through 11 in the comments, and if more than one landed, say which one landed hardest. And if this is the first time anyone's actually mapped it out for you instead of testing you on it, you're not the only one in that room. There are more of you than you think, far more than any report card ever let on. Thanks for watching.